success stories told by the people who lived them.
We're going to have some guests on this show that everybody knows, and we're going to have guests on this show that nobody knows yet.
One by one, Nick Hyder is adding hits to the hit streak.
Blessings, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the Hit Streak. I am your man, Nick Hyder, and joining me in the Hit Lab today, I've got an extra special treat for you. He is the founder and owner of the Middle Tennessee Chiropractic and Sports Injury. I've got the man himself, Dr. Jon Elson. How we doing, Dr. Jon?
I'm so good, Nick. Thanks so much for having me. It's really nice to be here. It's great getting to know you and Ree. It's any nice time to be away from patients and getting to partake in a podcast I've thoroughly enjoyed. So thanks again for having me.
There's a first hit right there, baby. We're hot. We are hot. So, folks, check it out. We've got a great story to tell you today. However, for our first question, I'm just going to get right into it right now. Dr. Jon, what in the world is a chiropractic adjustment?
Yeah, really good question. Chiropractic is study of our bones. So an adjustment is a force into our joints to get more motion. There's been a lot of hypotheticals out there. Do we move bones? Do bones actually shift? They say that's not the case, which is really tricky. When patients come into the office, it's really easy for me to look at you and say, hey, Nick, your vertebrae has shifted out of place. I'm going to adjust it. I'm going to put it back in place. You're going to go out in the real world. All is well. It's not what happens.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of neurophysiology that takes place within an adjustment. But I think what I try and instill in my patients is a chiropractic adjustment restores motion to my joints. I didn't say to your spine, it's to joints. So we adjust shoulders, ankles, knees, spine, right? It relaxes muscles and it decreases pain in our central nervous system, which is our brain.
Told you, folks. All right. So while we're at it, the purpose of an adjustment, I want to get to that for sure. I think you kind of covered that a little bit. We'll go a little bit deeper. However, I'm not that old, okay? But
right.
when I can remember in elementary school, sitting in fourth grade, I'll never forget it, sitting at the desk and here I'm popping my knuckles, right? And the teacher was like, don't do that. And I was like, what? And she's like, don't do that. Your knuckles are going to swell up and they're not going to move anymore. And I was like, I've never seen anybody. I was thinking this as a fourth grader. I've never seen anybody walking around with gigantic swollen knuckles. There's just been a lot of misconception. I guess just there's a massive learning curve. And, when it comes to being a former athlete, that was just a part of the therapeutic process to stay healthy, to stay limber and keep movement in a long strenuous season. Right. So what exactly is the purpose? And there's multiple types of adjustments, I guess. What's the purpose of an adjustment?
Yeah. Most people who come into the office, when they think of an adjustment, it's for stiff areas, right? I can't turn my neck as far. I can't bend over to touch my toes. So an adjustment's really to get motion back into your joints. You're knuckle popping, right? So there's not a lot of research for that about people who pop their knuckles, that they get arthritis. What I think about is the Goldilocks principle. So when we go from point A to B, our muscles move our bones, right? And we have to have stability. If not, we just crumble down like a Jell-O, right?
That's right.
So when you go through your knuckle popping, you're creating more motion. And they found that hypermobility, which is too much movement, has a bad effect on our joints, just like too little movement, which is called hypomobility. So there's this, we want movement, we don't want it to be excessive, but we have to have it. So it's, I think an adjustment should just be, hey, I'm trying to get more motion into the areas where you're stiff.
That makes a lot of sense. There was a video on YouTube a couple years ago that came out that blew my mind. I'd always learned that it was like, hey man, those are just the popping is the air pockets leaving the joints or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And somebody actually, it was like an x-ray. It was footage of like an x-ray where you could see the pocket and you saw it be released, that little gas pocket or whatever it was, right? And then once I saw that, then all of a sudden what I felt, I could imagine, I could see it, right? I could reference it, right? So it actually is just a little. There are air pockets that's what those pops are. Is that right?
Yeah. So inside of our joints, we have fluid, and inside that fluid, there's gas. And they found that thing that you saw, it's called a functional MRI, where they actually like cavitated or popped the knuckle and watched what happened. It's releases of gas from that area, which is the sound that you hear.
And so I told you this is going to be good. We're going to take back and hear the story because, like, this is the guy in Nolensville, Tennessee. He came highly referenced to me, and it's I've had the pleasure of having some amazing people in my life to help me feel better and work with me and everything else. And just like a lot of other things, you relocate, you move. And all of a sudden, the people that were servicing you, and when you lived at your previous location, it's no longer like geologically makes sense. So you start looking for other people, right? And you came highly recommended to us when we were looking for somebody closer to town. And the one thing that immediately stuck out to me that you were different than everybody else is like, it's the sports injury, the therapeutic process. It's not just coming in and getting popped and cracked and you're out of there. There's all these other things and stretching, and you've been great about like, I'm finding out that the things that I'm doing at home in between sessions are what make the sessions the most like the most useful, I guess, or they work the best. Now, I haven't always been that guy. I used not that before you, and I'm sorry to everybody else that's ever worked with me. They're like, "Hey, Nick, if you'll do this when you get home, 10 times a day, whatever." Yeah, I didn't do that, and then I came back in. I'm like, the problem's still there.
Yeah,
I wasn't doing the program right. So, how important is it, like when people actually take your advice and they work on those things at home? That's the therapy part versus when they come in and see. It's almost like a tutor in school. The tutor ain't there with you all day long. You get limited time with them. They give you homework to do to move forward, and they come back and you check in, right?
Yeah. This concept of doing things outside of the office is really important because getting really technical, we get programs in our brain, right? You don't have to tell your muscles to pick up your water bottle and put it to your mouth. You just do it. And we get into these pattern recognitions for stability, for movement. And if you just went into a physical therapist one time, probably not going to be successful. Same thing with chiropractic. It'd be like this too, Nick. If you went to an orthodontist, right, and they're trying to change the true structure of your jaw or your teeth, you're not going to put braces on for one day or for 1 week, right? It's a process. So if patients do the things outside of the office, their outcomes are significantly different had they not. That's not me saying that. That's the research, right? They've actually, in insurance world, they're starting to drive this concept of fee for performance, right? Which is a little different. We used to be fee for service. Nick comes into me, he pays me, he leaves the office. They're starting to say, well, if John got Nick better in 6 visits, but Nick went to Joe and it took him 10 visits, they're sending patients to me. So this concept of, hey, I need to get patients better really quickly and efficiently for them to succeed in their world and for me to succeed in my world. It's interesting. I think that there's good and bad to that.
Sure.
Primarily good for the patients. But
there's a lot that's not in your control that affects you a lot.
That's exactly right. Yeah. But I think doing things outside the office is empowering for the patients because they can find, hey, I can actually do these things. It doesn't hurt me. Wow. I can manage my pain myself, which is also important. I think that we probably get to this, but I'm going to dive into it a little early.
Go for it.
Most people who go to a chiropractor get told at one point or another, I need to go to them for life, right? I go to a chiropractor. Do I have to go to them forever? Is there a stopping point? Is there a finite, like you come to me for 3 weeks? They're starting to do that with insurance. That's this conversation again, where you have to have a treatment plan. Patients have to meet their treatment plan or they have to get passed on to another provider, which is an orthopedist or a neurologist or something of that nature. So exercises are important. You don't do them, the research says you don't get well. So I think that I've tried to instill that in my patients because I want them to do well.
That's right. That's right. All right. So how old are you, Dr. Jon?
37.
37. Good grief. I look 20 years older than he does. Man. So see, I should do more stuff at home. I should be living the program. And you've been married 4 years, got 2 young children, right?
Yep.
The 10-month-old is my best buddy. Like that's like, she's a dolphus. And like, oh man, that's my buddy.
She's a good girl, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And she's great at the office too. So.
She is. The whole spot is just brighter anytime a child like that's in your presence, right?
True.
It's fantastic. Well, at what point in your life did you decide that this was the path that you wanted to take? And then like, I'm really fascinated, like, I'm scared to even ask what the school bill looked like before you could even get started with this. And then, opening a practice, leasing versus buying a property when you've got that much open debt out maybe for school and all those things, it's hard to start a business without the medical school debt backing it, right? So tell me a little bit, let's take the folks back and let's figure out how you got here, right?
All right. So I'm senior in high school.
Okay.
And I'm passing my guidance counselor literally in the hallway. And she looks at me and she goes, "Jon, have you done a career assessment?" And I said, "No, ma'am." She says, "Come down to my office next week, do a career assessment. I'll get you out of class for a period." I'm like, yes.
There you go.
So I get out, do the career assessment. 2 things come back. Roofing. I said that correctly. Roofing houses.
Okay.
And chiropractic. She said, "Jon, you should go shadow one of those things."
That's smart.
Yeah. So it's February in Ohio. Not a lot of roofing.
Okay.
So I went to a chiropractor. And was like, man, this is really cool. Get out of high school. I think that as some kids do, I didn't really know if I still wanted to do that. Went into manual labor for about a year.
Everybody should.
I was like, I don't want to do this the rest of my life. I'm going to college. So went to my guidance counselor again. I was like, hey, I'm doing this thing. I'm going to become a chiropractor. So I think that started it. There was some good experiences within chiropractic for me, but it really was this fluke of, hey, like you could be good at this thing based off of the traits that you have in this career assessment.
So, lucky for us, it was cold in Ohio and it wasn't roofing season.
I know, right?
It wasn't roofing season. So were you an athlete? Did you play sports and stuff coming up?
Soccer, golf. Golf was what first got me into chiropractic. Had a few experiences, couldn't swing the ball right. Went into my chiropractor, felt great. And then that was the same chiropractor that I shadowed 2 years later and was like, hey, this is great. So go into chiropractic school, graduate. I went and did an internship for a while in Cincinnati, Ohio, and moved down here after that to Nashville. Started practicing for another practice as an associate, as most people do. I want to get my feet wet. And in 2014, I made the leap, did a bunch of due diligence, loved Nolensville, saw the potential, and opened the practice. And it's been a journey. We've reveled in the journey.
That's right.
but I wouldn't change it. It's been a really good experience.
Man, well, it's like I say, it's folks. I got to tell you a quick little story about Dr. Jon, and this is I was very happy with the experience up until this point, but for about the last year and a half or so, anytime I would get an adjustment or a massage or whatever, anytime they would get to my neck, they would say, as a matter of fact, the massage therapist would like raise their hand, "Whoa, what is that?" I'm like, "What do you mean? There's a lump back there." I'm like, "Well, I think it's a knot. That's why I'm here." And they would say, "It's not a knot." And then I came to you and you're like, "Do you know what that is?" I was like, "Nope." And you said, "You should get that looked at." And I was like, all right. So 3 or 4 people had said, like, in this matter of weeks, you need to get that looked at. So we did. And that's a little bit of a scary feeling. And you go get an ultrasound and it's non-conclusive and you need the next thing. folks, while we're going through this, not only is Dr. Jon advising and keeping up with this stuff, but he's calling the people who are getting my test to get me the results back faster so that he knows what's going on and everything else. And he's texting me on his own time throughout this whole process. And after the first time I saw him, he texted me that night and said, "Hey, how you feeling?" You know, like I'm really, there's great people out there, but like the customer experience is number one when you're launching a business, or running a good business for that matter, and staying in business. And for me, like we were very happy with everything. And then that happened, and it was just like, it just changed the game. And it gave, you know, you start to see things differently when you're going through something like that. You start to have thoughts and all these things. You see things in a different perspective for a moment, and everything's fine. Thank goodness. You know, thank the Lord for that. However, there was about 2 weeks there where you're like hanging, it's like a cliffhanger, and you know, you're just hanging by a thread. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what comes next. You know, the results, the answers that we get might be life-changing, and they might not. It's very crazy. But man, I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah.
Very much for that. And like, and if you do it for me, I know you do it for everybody. Right. And that's incredible, man.
Have you ever been in, like, obviously you have, but like these experiences of the unknown where they just like, they make you anxious inside?
Yes. And it's, you know, I'm not a big surprise guy. I don't like them. You know, my wife doesn't either. We can't hold a surprise from each other. It's pitiful. We hardly ever get to a birthday before we open presents. Usually it's hey, it came in, I'm not even wrapping it. Here you go. But the only thing I could tell, you know, the excitement, we say a lot that, like, you know, stress is just misguided excitement. Okay. It's basically the same emotion. It's just perceived differently within your mind. And so it felt a lot like, you know, that night before Christmas when Santa Claus was coming and you were a kid. It felt like that, except it could be doomed news. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It was a little bit like Santa Claus because, you know, I would be like, you know, I did talk back that time. I wonder if I'm getting coal in my stockings. Yeah. You know, I was late for bed that time. Yeah. All those things. So it was for me, it was important to be strong for my wife, who was a total hero and like warrior during all those things. Like, she's so brave. But I remember when we got the results back that it was, you know, nothing big and it was okay. I just remember she just like jumped up and made a big noise and hugged my neck. Yeah. You know, it really put things in perspective. It truly did. It was a gift at the end of the day. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like those experiences for patients, the unknowns, I think, are what what keep you going as far as practice going. Like, hey, you know, I can help this person, but comfort and kindness in those experiences, I feel like, go a long way for people too, just in those unknown, trying times. So yeah, I would want that from my physician. So I think that passing that along to the patients is really important.
Well, you know, and there's trust too. Like, you know, you're moving people's bodies in a way that they might not have been moved before, and a lot of times you just met them, especially when you're moving their head. Like, right. I remember, I didn't know anything about this, and the first time somebody yanked my head to the side real fast, and you heard that pop, I'm like, first thing you think is, can I move everything? Right. You know what I'm saying? It's such a funny thing. Yeah. Like, well, let me ask you this: how close? You know, you see in the movies when they snap people's necks and all that kind of stuff. It's just a real quick twist. It looks a lot like what you guys do. Yeah. So what, like, you know, how great of a difference is it from what you guys are doing versus to actually, like, it's a big difference, I'm assuming, to actually snap somebody's neck in a bad way.
You know, in those, like Jean-Claude Van Damme's, right? So we think that he's actually breaking the neck and the bones. What actually happens in those circumstances is there's an artery in our neck that gets twisted, pinched, aggravated, and that is what can hurt people. Truly, there's I think varying data as far as, is it 1 in a million, 1 in 3 million, 1 in 10 million. There's a research study by this guy named Cassidy that tried to kind of prove this point to people. Hey, you know, is chiropractic safe or not? They took, I think, 15 articles where people actually got hurt in chiropractic. Want to know how many people actually, of those, were actually chiropractors that performed the manipulation? 1.
Oh, wow.
Meaning it's like massage therapist you trained to just read, right? Like these things where you're not a trained physician.
Yeah.
But truly from a training standpoint, the risk is extremely, extremely low.
Gotcha. Well, again, like, you know, you don't know anything, and the only people that you've ever seen get their head turned like that is in a movie.
Right.
Because when they're on the patient's bed, there's the door closed between you. There's no audience.
Yeah.
Right? All right. So you get out of school. And then and this is medical school, right? So this is this is way different than just like regular undergrad.
Yeah.
You know, maybe add a comma, move the comma to the left or add a zero,
Yeah.
And then you've got to go out and you've got to start a practice. So just like every business, they got to go out and they got to get their first customers, right? So what is that like? How does that work? It's not like you joined a practice with a whole bunch of other practitioners. I'm assuming that's how people can get fed some patients and walk through and everything else. Talk to me about the journey of your first year, getting your first clients, where your first office was, all that.
So I was practicing in Cool Springs as an associate. The girl I was dating was adamant, John, like you can start your practice, you can do this. I believe in you, blah, blah, blah. So when I took that leap, Nolensville at the time was about 6,000 people.
Yep.
Right?
What year was that?
2014.
Can you believe it?
I know.
It hadn't been that long ago.
Like the data suggested we would be where we were today. But if you asked me then, hey, would the population be 15 or 16,000? I would have said, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like it's going to grow, but I don't think it's going to grow at that capacity. So,
I'm one of those people that came in that period, right?
Right. So I actually started very, very humbling. I was in the upstairs of a house in historic Nolensville that was built in 1904.
Gotcha.
The stairs were narrow.
I wouldn't stay there after dark.
It was
footsteps.
Yeah, right. It was just that I think that the space in Nolensville was few and far between, but I really wanted to be there. I wanted to be in Nolensville. I didn't want to start in Smyrna and then move to Nolensville or College Grove. So I want to start in Nolensville. So I start in this guy's house, and the practice was like, I think most people, it was a grind. There was probably 2 or 3 things that I think changed the velocity of my practice. I'm not an advocate. I don't work for them, but BNI was a good thing for me.
Absolutely.
I got involved in a chapter here in Middle Tennessee that was big. It was growing. It was in Nolensville. I got to meet all the business professionals in Nolensville, which was like, I don't know if you could pay money for that sometimes.
That's
like,
right.
Like to go and actually meet people that are involved in your community that are doing the same thing that you're doing. It was really cool. So I got involved with that. I met a few people along the way that changed the course of my career in Nolensville, like individual people. So practice is growing. It's like, man, we need to get out of this space.
Yeah.
For multiple reasons, right? I started looking at a commercial space and it was going well. The due diligence was there and we could support all the things. And this house came available in this process. And it was like, holy cow. We don't see that too often in a commercially zoned area in Nolensville, right on the main drag. The realtor was like, hey, you need to really go look at this place.
Yeah, it's already broken up in a lot of great ways.
Right, yeah. So I went and looked at it, and the guy that owned it before me had it set up actually as a duplex. So you walked in one door and there was, we'll say like 1,000 square feet. You walked in another door, there was another 1,000 square feet, and they didn't join. So when I walked in it the first time, it was like, oh man, I can't see this. Like, where are we going to put the patients? Where's the front desk? I just couldn't visualize it. So I leave, go home, talk to my wife. She's like, I think you should go back and look at it again. And literally in this week time, he cut a piece of drywall out that joined the 2 spaces.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, oh man, I could see this now. Like patients could come in here. We could have treatment rooms back there. So we pulled the trigger, and it probably will go down as the best financial decision of my life. Hands down. It's been
by purchasing that, you gave yourself so much room to grow in the future.
Yeah.
Because you own commercial real estate.
Yeah.
Like that, when my wife and I figured that was a big missing piece for us, is we didn't have enough assets, and especially like anything in real estate. So once we started to get those, all of a sudden this whole other world of growth opened up. When you can leverage lines of credits and all these other types of things based on equity and everything else to move, you can basically just empower your money and move it back and forth to get where you need to go. Right. So that was absolutely a big decision for you.
Yeah. And, I would say
you're in the heart of Nolensville.
Truly. Yeah. Like right on Nolensville Road.
On the strip.
You know, it's funny though. I shouldn't say funny, but you come into Nolensville and there were at one time 4 chiropractors within 6 businesses consecutively. So,
wow.
We come into this conversation of, how are there 4 chiropractors within a half a mile and they're all like doing well, which I think is kind of the beauty within chiropractic. You can specialize in pregnancy, you can specialize in pediatrics, you can specialize in sports, and there's room for everybody and commingle all in the same thing. But man, moving to Nolensville into that specific space was, it allowed me to have more space, to treat more patients, to, sky's the limit, baby.
I love that. And that was, that's not an easy decision when you come out of school in debt and taking on, buying
more debt.
Yeah, a lot of debt. buying a home like that in Nolensville, like, man, that comes with a hefty price tag. That takes it takes a lot of faith.
Like you're going through that process and you're praying about it, you're thinking about it, all the things. Like, man, do I really make this step, this leap of faith? And you start doing things that you traditionally probably wouldn't do, right? So I have a patient in there one day, and very successful businessman. I just happened to look at him. I said, Parker, what do you think about this? He goes, John, you will make the best decision in the moment with all the information that you have. If you think this is a good thing, pull the trigger, baby. So we did. And and you don't know what you don't know.
You still got to go get the client.
And it was one of those, I'm taking on more debt. I'm a little vulnerable, but you think you have faith in yourself and you can do it. So
I love it. All right. Let me get back to my notes here. So good. This is a great question. How much time do you spend between chiropractic and sports injury?
Yeah, good question. I was talking to Dale as I was coming in. Probably 90% of the people who come into my office are what I would say are like family people, like dads, moms, kids. I will treat 10% of my practice in one day on a true like sports injury, which is cool. But then if you took like this spin on it, right? I have my 45-year-old dad in there who runs, he lifts weights, but he's not like an athlete, right? But there's just still athletic injuries. He still comes into my office. He's at the gym. He's doing bicep curls and he tweaks his shoulder, right? That's still a sports injury.
Sure.
You might not consider him an athlete, but those are still like applicable to, hey, you got bicipital tendonitis, just like a sports person might. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's applicable, but like to true sports athletes, very small portion of my my income comes from athletes.
Gotcha. Well, maybe we should fix that. Maybe we should fix that. Again, like, how do you go about when you're first getting started? You just took on this. You got a young family, right?
Yeah.
So you're probably like, how long have you moved here, and do you own your home and all those things? Like, I want to paint a picture of the journey here, right? So you got medical school debt. You got two young children,
2 young kids,
right? A marriage under 10 years,
living in Nolensville,
which ain't cheap.
Ain't cheap, man.
So you're probably getting, working on your own home,
Yeah.
and you're buying some different, it's at the end of the day, it's like owning multiple homes,
Yeah.
because you got to care for it and everything else. And everything, about half of Nolensville is in floodplains too, right?
Truly.
So that's a part of it. And you have to build that in your business model.
Man, this goes back to like almost a deep conversation. I feel like my parents were really frugal, right? Down to earth, frugal people. And it was something that I think maybe instilled in me Like, hey, we use what you got. When I started my practice, I started it with no debt, right? I'm in the upstairs of a 1904 house. I wasn't paying a lot in rent. I got used equipment. I did all the things that my mentor told me that I should do that I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
I want to go buy a new table. It's like, John, get a used table, start practicing. I feel like those decisions saved me a decent amount of money. Maybe not what I wanted to do, but was probably a smart thing. But buying that house was, at the time, was right before Nolensville really started to become inflated. So I bought that house for what I would say is pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
Took on debt, but it was like this decision. I'm paying rent.
Yeah.
Or I could pay my mortgage.
That's right.
Right. And it turned out that I'm paying less in my mortgage than what I would be paying in my rent. So
that's how it works out a lot.
A lot of the time, right? So I feel like financially that was a really good thing. Student loan debt, man, that's a conversation for if there's ever a chiropractic wannabe out there. Like, hey, I'm a high school student, college student, and I want to become a chiropractor. I've had this conversation with my mentors. Like, if my son wants to become a chiropractor, do I tell him to? I think that the cost to benefit ratio from chiropractic school is not there, which is really unfortunate. If I'm being truthful, you can come out very similar in education. We're going to call it a physical therapist. They don't manipulate, but they do a lot of the same stuff. I shouldn't even say that. They're actually starting to manipulate. So they're taking weekend courses. They're learning how to adjust patients, blah, blah, blah. If you became a physical therapist and you come out of school, we had this, right?
Yeah.
You get referrals from medical doctors.
That's right.
You don't really have to work at growing your practice. I think the chiropractic ceiling is way higher than a physical therapist financially.
Gotcha.
Right? I own my practice. I get to dictate what I do.
Yep.
From a physical therapy perspective, it's like, Dr. John's sending me patients. I need to treat his patients and send them back to him. There's not a lot of freedom in that journey, which is one of the reasons I think why I became a chiropractor is I want to treat patients exactly what I felt like I wanted to treat them.
Interesting.
I didn't want somebody else telling me how to do it. So the cost to benefit ratio for chiropractic right now, unfortunately, it's just not there.
Gotcha.
I'd become a physical therapist if I went back to school. I'd learn how to manipulate.
Yeah.
And then I'd come out and do the same thing.
Make a transition, so to speak. So at the end of the day, the education required to become a doctor of chiropractic is basically very similar to the education that everybody else that's treating people gets, right?
Yeah. So chiropractic school is really specific to a chiropractic school, right? I couldn't go to the Ohio State University. I couldn't go to University of Tennessee and become a chiropractor. You go and you get your bachelor's degree. 90% of the time it's in some type of biology.
Okay.
Right? You graduate, you apply for chiropractic school. I think to date there's 16 in the United States.
Okay.
I went to one in St. Louis, Missouri called Logan College of Chiropractic. You get accepted. It's 3.5 years all the way through.
Wow. So
most people go to chiropractic school for 3.5 years, 4 years undergrad, so 7.5 years. Physical therapy, almost the exact same thing.
Wow.
Med school, different. Why? They do internships. They do preceptorships afterwards. Chiropractic gets built into the program, which is blessing and a curse, right? I go to school all day. I get done. I go to clinic at night. Where in med school, you go to school all day long. You go home. And then when you're done, you go do your residency.
Gotcha.
Probably a little bit smarter that way if I was trying to change some of the chiropractic curriculum, but
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. What, again, we talked earlier about, 20 to 30 years ago, the myths or the thoughts about chiropractors and how much they're starting to change. You're starting to see more and more primary docs support this, right? But what's been the biggest separation between primary docs and chiropractors in the past?
And I think that I would probably boil that down to miseducation.
Okay.
Or lack thereof, right? You get told something from somebody and you believe it until proven otherwise sometimes. I think within the medical community, there were faults that they found within chiropractic early on. Like we're going to say the 60s, the 70s. These chiropractic physicians are getting jailed, literally, right? There's this lawsuit within the AMA and the chiropractic world. And then I feel like the lawsuit gets settled. They rule in favor of chiropractic. They're like, hey, the AMA, you guys are being kind of rude to chiropractors, back off of them. But there wasn't this shift in mindset. It was like, hey, we'll back off of them.
Yeah.
But we're not going to refer patients to them. We don't like what they're doing. But it's changing, right? We're starting to get tons of research that supports manipulation. Patients get better with manipulation. The cost benefit for manipulation. Like some of these insurance companies now are starting to run true like trials where they're having patients go to conservative care. They always come out better and cheaper than had you went to the orthopedic route or the bigger chain, right? I think that there should be a conservative care in most circumstances, at least to start off care. You're not responding, go on to the next field, which is usually orthopedic. But man, Nick, that question I think burns me. Maybe puts a little chip on my shoulder at night sometimes.
Sure.
Because you want to be accepted by what you would say are your peers. Like, hey, I went to school for a long time. You went to school for a really long time. I do something a little bit differently, but I specialize in your joints. If you had a joint problem, you need to come and see me.
Yeah, man. I mean, like just the equipment alone, those tables, all those things, like, I mean, they're all very specific to what it is that you're using them for. It's not like you can just go to a furniture store and get any of this stuff, right? You know, so this is all medical grade stuff. I mean, everything's moving. You got massage tables and traction units and all these things that just like, I know that it ain't cheap. Goodness gracious. Just a little, what is it? A lot of chiropractic, the little gun looking thing, the activator. Those things are like $1,000, that little thing. That's crazy.
You wouldn't think that. Hey, really side note here. Funny story about that. The guy who invented that went into a dentist and there was a dentist using that to extract teeth. And then he was like, hey, like I could probably use that on joints. This story goes on. He develops this tool, but that tool is very expensive.
It is. So let's just, everybody knows what I'm talking about. It makes a sound and it feels kind of good, but like you wouldn't believe it. Like they're like $1,000 or more.
Right.
So what is the purpose? It's the activator. So I'm assuming it activates things, right? So how does that thing work?
Yeah. So if we went back to what an adjustment is, right? I said we're trying to get joints to move more. There is this equation where it's force. It is mass times speed, right? So if we had a big truck, it hit you as opposed to a little truck, the big truck's going to hurt more. It has more mass.
Gotcha.
If you have same trucks, they're going faster than one. The one that's going faster is going to hurt you more. When you talk about manipulation, you want to be extremely fast with a little amount of force. That activator, the clicker, is extremely fast. Doesn't have a lot of force, but it still produces a lot of, force. It produces a lot of force, even though it's like this small little tool. Yeah. That makes sense. All right. So I would assume most people come for back and neck pain, most common things, right? And it's crazy because like, I actually, my left shoulder, I golf the same 7 times every single year. And at the end, I'm like, man, that was fun. I'm going to do more next year. And I don't. And then it's right back to the same 7. It's always in the fall. But about the third one, my left shoulder, it starts to hurt on the swing a little bit. And usually that's the adjustments on those things are extremely helpful for me. And it's usually just like something's a little pressure and a little bit of movement solves that problem for me. But when it comes to the back and the neck pain, first question anybody asks me is, how do you sleep? Yeah. Right. So what are some of the most common causes for low back or any kind of type of back and neck pain, which is probably what most people come to see you for first? Probably posture. Yeah. Okay. Oh man, I'm thinking. I know I sit terrible on this desk now. As we like straighten up right now, sit a little straighter. But no, intrinsic and extrinsic causes, right? So we could get really deep. We could say the foods that you eat.
We got to stay there for a minute too. Go ahead, but we're going to talk about that.
So we can create inflammation in multiple different aspects of our life. One being food, one being stress, one being my sleep. Right?
Yeah.
And you start combining these things, and then we get into these scenarios. But I think that sleeping's one that's tough because we're in it for so long. Right. Like, how many times have you...
I'm not even aware of what's happening either.
Right. I don't think too many people are. But when you wake up and you're like, man, something doesn't feel right. I went to bed fine. I woke up. I don't feel fine. So sleeping's a big one. People sleep all over the place. We grind our teeth when we're sleeping, sleep apnea, all these things.
Yeah.
I actually was listening to a podcast this morning. They were talking about sleeping. The guy... 53 years old, he ends up with a pacemaker. The ER physician said that the risk of you with cardiovascular disease sleeping less than 5 hours a day exponentially higher. Right? So, and you start talking to people, you're like, how many hours do you sleep?
Yeah.
The times that you hear 4-5 hours, it's more than what you would assume.
Yeah.
Like 8 hours is what you're supposed to get.
Sure.
So sleeping stuff, positions that we're in throughout the day.
Yeah.
Lack of conditioning, right? Not too many people actually are on a physical therapy type program. The movement principle in our body is really, it's an important one. If you don't move it, you lose it, kind of a thing. Holds true.
I love that.
In fact, that's a real thing. So,
if you don't drive a car for a long time either, or, like I have a lawnmower that I think I've started twice since we moved in our spot. And that's just so I can teach my kid how to cut a yard since somebody else does it for us. But again, like if it sits there for 2 years, it took a minute to get that thing started that first time.
Yeah.
If you don't use it, you lose it type thing. That makes sense in so many things. You mentioned the nutrition, and I can tell you, I've said it on here a couple of times. It's a big admittance that I love cookies, right? I love cookies.
Yeah.
And during certain times of the year when I eat more than I should, it's usually at night. And then I feel like trash when I wake up the next day. And the only difference is like if I eat good like I normally do, and I don't have any type of too much sugar in the evenings, I wake up easily, I wake up in a better mood, easier, things don't hurt as much, all that stuff. And for a long time I just assumed it has to be something I'm doing with movement. It has to be something that I'm sleeping. I didn't even look at nutrition for the longest time. How important is nutrition to overall health and stability like that?
I think it should probably start there. And chiropractic school, we get a decent amount of nutrition.
Yeah.
Probably not as much as what we should, but there's this concept of like the things that you put in your body are, they should be fuel. And I think that a lot of people eat to just, to satisfy their cravings. Right. But if the joke in our house is, if you had one car and you had it your entire life, right, you give it the best oil, give it the best engine.
Oh man.
You'd probably take it into your mechanic more than what you should.
That's right.
Because it's your only one.
That's right.
Right? I think a lot of people, they forget that concept of their joints, right? Like you have one shoulder, you have one spine, you have one hip, you have one knee. The foods that you eat are directly correlated to inflammation in our body.
You know what I found too is, most folks that they wait till they have the stroke or the heart attack or they get diabetes to change their diet. It takes something horrible happening to us to make that change, even though we could all agree, I should have ate better. I knew I should have ate better. I made poor decisions. Yeah. Right. And that's what I found out with working with you is it's not something I come to you when I have issues. Sure. I come to you to avoid the issues. Yeah. Right. So it's more preventative for me now than it is for anything else, So for me, it's like, working out as much with my kid, trying to stay young, fighting the natural processes of life. I'm coming in there and I'm always saying, hey, this has bothered me this week. I ate better. This is what I worked out. Is there any exercises I should avoid? Yeah. For me, it's preventative and therapeutic. And obviously like I get the best night of sleep I get each week is the day that I come see you. You know what I mean? And, but I was there with you yesterday but then today, I'm one of those guys that wakes up super stiff and it takes me a minute to get going.
Yeah.
How should, like, sleeping on stomach is bad, right?
It's not great. There's probably one condition I would say it's okay for, but
Okay.
99.9% of the time, don't like it.
How important? So I was my wife and I used to always like go get the cheapest mattress we could find, the cheapest pillows. And then it started to, as we aged, then all of a sudden we started to look at, finding some other ways to get comfort.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was like, we spend, we used to buy the cheapest phones and stuff all the time. And I realized that every dollar we make passes through a device. So why not have the best device possible
True.
to service that? And if you're sleeping the right amount, you're spending around a third of your life in that bed. So, spend accordingly. And what we found is the more that we spent, and there's all these different types of pillows and based on your sleeping positions and everything else. I was always a stomach sleeper, and it's been a slow transition out. Now it's more of a side, but the best I feel is when I sleep on my back.
Yeah. I think that if I could get every patient to sleep on their back for 8 hours a night, I think that my job would be a little easier.
Now, though, sleeping on my back, I usually get the slap and it's like, roll over, snoring.
Snoring, right. Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, she's got to sleep too. But yeah, back would probably be the best. So, how would somebody go about picking out a mattress or a pillow to serve them better? I guess the first thing is figure out how you sleep.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was a study that they did on mattress selection from a provider. Right. So you come into me and you're like, John, what mattress did I get? Was not too successful. So they basically said that the patient preference was what was most important. So I tell people, hey, you need to try and get a mattress that I think that has a good quality to it. One that probably has some type of return policy that's longer than 30 days, right? How many times have you went and laid on a mattress for 5 minutes and been like, I love this thing. And then you got it home and you're like, I hate this thing.
It's the best in like the really nice hotels and stuff. So like my wife I have literally taken all the sheets off the bed to figure out what mattress it was so that we could shop it, because sometimes you'll find that one where it's just like, this is it.
Yeah.
And what's good for me isn't always good for her. We never tracked anything in our sleeping. And again, it's a third of your life that you're just not even going to pay attention to, And so we've started to experiment with some apps to see, it's actually kind of funny, when you expel gases and things in your sleep and stuff, and the app tracks it. It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
Delete.
That's right. I'm like, now check this out. But for me, starting to learn about that sleep, the diet, then all of a sudden that just kind of aids in thinking about the movements that we're doing, the exercises that we're doing, and then again that helps coming in. So once again, folks, we're hanging out with the owner and founder of the Middle Tennessee Chiropractic and Sports Injury Practice right here in Nolensville, Tennessee, Dr. Jon Elson. You can check out his website at midtnchiro.com. Also on Facebook, facebook.com/MTCSI. Right. So Dr. Jon, if anybody wanted to come in and book some time with you, is your website the best place to do that? You got a phone number? Let's tell them the phone number as well.
Yep. 615-776-7246. We, most of the offices, we'll just take them over the phone. We accept insurance, pretty easy to get in. We try and get patients in pretty quickly because we know most of them are hurting. So
let's talk about the insurance portion.
Yeah.
That's, as people in the insurance industry, that was always something that, over the last, especially 7 or 8 years, that becomes, in the beginning, nobody ever asked, is chiropractic covered?
Yep.
And over time, that's become more and more of a request. And at the same time, you're starting to see more and more benefits applied to that from those insurance providers, right? So a lot of practices might not take insurance. What would be some reasons why they wouldn't?
Oh, man. I think that's probably a little easier, truthfully. You don't have to, I don't have to wait for payment.
Yeah, you get your money faster.
Right, get my money faster. I don't have to hire a clearinghouse to scrub all my claims and make sure they look good before they send them on to the insurance companies. The time that it takes for me to process all those claims.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that for me and where I am in my practice, it's probably 6 to 1, half dozen the other. I could probably go cash and be fine. And at the end of the day, we're going to be good. But I think that insurance is nice because one of the first things that people call, hey, you accept my insurance?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it feels like a sign of credibility on the practice a little bit.
Yeah. I think that most people don't realize that they have chiropractic benefits, right?
Gotcha.
So almost on every policy, there's chiropractic benefits. But what I think that most people who don't understand their insurance is you have a deductible.
Yeah.
Right. So until you meet your deductible, even though your insurance company says that you have 20 allotted visits, you have to meet your deductible before they start paying them.
Yeah. Yeah. And some plans might have a fixed dollar amount benefit to go towards it. And it may be like your fixed benefit may be $50. And after your network reduction, if you are in network, and then your benefits, if there's $150 on the visit, then you owe the other 100, right? Yep. So it's understanding what you got, and you just don't slap that insurance card on there and everything just covered. It's magical and everything disappears.
I guess it was back in 2017. 2 major carriers in the state of Tennessee went on to do this capped visit. So it, I think, was perceived by the chiropractic profession as a bad thing. And I think that I could go both ways. I understand why they did it. Do I like it? No. But it basically said that if Nick comes into my office and he's there for, let's just be facetious, let's say 2 hours, and he gets dry needled, he gets decompression, he gets a massage, he gets adjusted, he lays on the roller bed, right? All this stuff. Mm-hmm. Even if I build out, let's be facetious, let's say $200, they would only pay me $60.
Gotcha.
Right? So capped visit. There was, I would say, a little bit of anger about the thing, but you could look at it multiple scenarios, right? So I can get a patient in there, and no matter what I do, I can get paid $60 for it. So if you came in and I just snapped a piece of kinesio tape on your knee and you left, $60. But if I spent 2 hours with you, $60.
Yeah.
So it burns me because it has forced some of our profession to be financially driven, which I understand. I'm a businessman, but I think that there's this thing within becoming a doctor is you take care of your patients and the money should flow afterwards. So when they capped these visits, these guys are basically saying, oh, hey, Nick, I'm going to treat you, but instead of treating you for 30 minutes, facetious, right? I'm going to treat you for 2 minutes because it doesn't matter. I get paid the same. Mm-hmm. I think that it's going to come back to haunt the insurance company because it has unfortunately driven our profession to be quicker.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to get paid more money if I do less things.
Or incentivizing the wrong things.
You're exactly right. It's like, what the heck?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah. It's such the healthcare industry is massive.
Yeah.
And economically, it's such a huge chunk of just, there's just so much money being moved back and forth. And like the coolest thing about starting an insurance agency back in 2013 is like, once all the stuff that was required to get the license, it was a lot like a driver's license.
Yeah.
Knowing how many motorcycle accidents happened on the interstate last year didn't make me a better driver, but I was aware of a statistic. That was a lot of the insurance licensing stuff from the state. That's required. But once you get into it and you start working with patients or clients, and you start seeing how these plans are actually applied to their life and what they need and so on and so forth, I can remember telling other folks, I'm like, man, like this should have been a class in school. Like this is, 2 years, in 2009, we started our agency in 13. In 2009, we were in a bad place, but I had my appendix out, and we were in between policies. We were going from, my most common response that I did when it came time, when the insurance guy somehow got my wife to let him in the front door and sit on our couch to pitch us, it was always like, she was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, the least expensive thing they got. First of all, I've never gone through, like when I go to the car lot, I'm like, give me the cheapest car you got. Like, you know, you go to the store, give me the cheapest steak you got.
Yeah.
Go to the restaurant. Like, that's never been a part of my life. I don't know why I did it then.
Yeah.
I just didn't take the time to understand. And so I had my appendix ruptured in 2009. So I was in the hospital for like 2 weeks. Those infections and everything else. And it was a big old bill. And I was in the middle of 2 different policies. So I was uninsured. Mm-hmm. Okay. And if the doctor that was working with me and a grandfather that's no longer here had not have bailed me out, I don't know where I would be today.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything to lose back then. So I was in a bad spot.
Yeah.
And it was all because I just give me the cheapest thing we got. And I didn't care that there was 30 days of gap.
Yeah.
I didn't care about any of those things. Right. And so when it comes to the world of healthcare and all those things, like, you know, there's just a lot of assumptions out there.
Yeah.
Get to know what's happening. The people in your life, like your chiropractor or anybody that's doing ongoing therapy with you, like, it's kind of like when somebody owning a business, it became a better tax decision to lease a car a couple of years ago with the company that it did to buy it.
Yep.
Right. And it made sense as a part of the business model to just have a car expense in the business. It's now just a part of our life that we have visits with Dr. Jon every week.
Yeah.
That's just a part of our life. And we've been able to factor that into our life financially and everything else. And it's made a world of difference. You know what I'm saying? It's not just, I came to you twice, see you next time something bad happens.
Yeah.
You know, what would be, what percentage of the population out there would you say, I know it's really low, actually go to a chiropractor these days?
Research says 10%.
What? No, only 10%.
Yeah. Only. I mean, so like this huge market, which I think will probably change significantly. I mean, we touched on it, but the fact that people outside of chiropractic are trying to learn manipulation, I think just proves the point that there's something powerful in it.
That's right.
Whether you call yourself a chiropractor or you're an orthopedist and you're manipulating, like at the end of the day, you're still manipulating a patient. I think that the population size will grow to what? I don't know. I mean, I'd like most people to at least try it. For ailments.
Man, you know, and again, there's like, you get to know your people on a really personal level. Yeah. Which is really cool because, like, again, all these things that they're coming to you for are happening in their personal life. Yeah. So you ask a lot of questions. You ask me, you know, I have to travel a lot for work. And then, like, that's usually like when I'm the most beat up when I get back to you is after sitting on bad airplane seats or bad hotel beds or whatever it may be. So I wanted to, first of all, folks, Mid-TN Chiro is his website, and he actually has some great FAQs, frequently asked questions on there. He's about the education was the point I was making, right? It's not just coming to see you. He gets to know you on a personal level because he wants to know how to give you put you in a position or a situation where you're going to be the most comfortable and have success down the road, right? So he took time to put questions on his website for you. I would encourage you guys to do that. But I'm going to go through and just rattle off a couple of them. Yeah. And we'll get some answers there. This will be a little bit fun. So I think we already talked about number one, which is about the education piece. But we probably touched on this too, but let's hit it again. What are the licensing requirements for a person to practice chiropractic in the state of Tennessee?
Yep. So there's national boards. You got to pass them all. Then you have to go through a state board and pass it. It's maintained. I think it's every 2 years. And then continuing education requirements. You got to do them. I think it's 24 hours every year to maintain your license. And outside of that, you got to be a good human being.
That's right. That's a big one. That's a big one. So does chiropractic treatment require a referral from a PCP, a primary care doctor?
No. It does not. It's a direct portal of entry. So you could call the office. Hey, I want to schedule. You don't have to call your primary care physician, your insurance company, which is very convenient.
Gotcha. And and we talked a little bit about what's the purpose of an adjustment. Let's see. All right, this is a good one. Does chiropractic treatment hurt?
It's not supposed to, does it? Yeah. I mean, often it does. If you sprained your ankle, right, and you went and walked on it, it's probably going to hurt a little bit.
That's a good way to look at it.
Most patients who come in the office are in some capacity hurting.
Yeah.
And when you start to move things that hurt, it typically hurts a little bit. But I think over time, yeah, it's not supposed to hurt. I think that most people walk out of the office and say, I feel better. But in the moment, man, that's a subjective thing.
Yeah. And it's, you start to kind of, it's almost like the best way I ever heard when I was a teenager and I got braces, my dad's best friend, his name is Rick. And you know, of course, I'm a little wimp, and I'm complaining my teeth hurt.
Yeah.
Like I wasn't as bad as my son is with his braces, but I was pretty bad. But I remember Rick said, you know, braces. It was almost like it was a hurt that, like, after a while you learned to like it. Like it felt good, almost like a massage.
Yeah.
And that's what I've found, that, like, you know, I crave that pressure. I crave whatever it is that you're applying to help me move and to feel better. Right. So at first it just becomes something that you tolerate. It's a standard of something, right?
Yeah.
All right. Will you keep my primary care physician informed of the care I received from your office?
Yeah. As long as patients are okay with it. Important, because we are a portal of entry. You don't have to call your primary care physician. I think most of the time they don't necessarily know that you are going to a chiropractor. It's really nice for them to be in the loop, whether it was a scan you ordered, and the primary care physician didn't have it. It's nice for them to have it. I would want that X-ray report or the MRI report. So yeah, we're sending notes over to primary care physicians every single day, keeping them updated.
Personal question for me.
Yeah.
You know, we have a big presence on social media, and you know what? A lot of chiropractors are starting to have that as well.
Yeah.
Where they're putting microphones on their people, and you get to hear the pop and all that kind of stuff. And you see all kinds of stuff where people are putting towels around people's necks and pulling, or Y straps and all these things to move around. There's one going around. I think they call it the magic hug. Are you familiar with that one?
I haven't seen.
Where they get you underneath here and they lift you that way, kind of like that. It's a neck thing. But like literally, like these guys are, they have a whole lot going on with those things, and some of that stuff you see doesn't look real comfortable. How would one go about picking a chiropractor?
Man, good question. I think experience from people around, really powerful, right? Mm-hmm. Most of the referrals that we get in the office are organic. Nick tells his friend, they come into the office, right?
That's how I found you.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's powerful because you trust the people around you.
As a matter of fact, it was a colleague, somebody that is in your same space that we were no longer going to be able to see them anymore that sent us to you, right? So that's a huge compliment.
Yeah.
When a colleague refers the same thing that they do to somebody else, that was big.
Yeah. I interesting question.
Yeah. It's, you know, I've never had a bad one. I've been very blessed to have many great ones that started back when as an athlete in the training room, you know. Mm-hmm. And I learned a lot about my body through those treatments. Like the first time I ever had a back spasm, I thought it was my neck, but it was actually in my back. And it took me, I couldn't move my neck. So I assumed that it was a neck issue, but it was in the back. And once they dug into it, I was like, yep, that's it. That's it. So a lot of times the source of the pain is not the source of the problem, right?
Yeah.
My heels bothered me, and you were like, and we figured out it was in my calf.
Yeah. Referred pain is very prevalent in our body. So where you feel things, not always where it's happening, but there's this, one of my greatest mentors is like, touch them where they hurt, but examine them all over, which no one wants to go in and say, hey, my shoulder hurts, and me not touch their shoulder and work all around their shoulder. But there's this, there's multiple things that play into our joints.
All right, here's a good one. This one I dedicate to my dad, Mickey. Can chiropractic help someone who has had back and neck surgery?
Yeah. Another really good question. The answer is yes. From a fusion standpoint, which is one of the most popular surgeries that we get in our spine, where they go in and they clean it up and they put some screws and rods in it, and they basically fuse it so it doesn't move anymore. Manipulation at that area is contraindicated. right? So I don't want to go trying to move something that's fixated.
Yeah.
Bad move. Surgeons will call you and they will ask you to stop in a very unkind way.
Gotcha.
So you can work around these things, which is really common. I think that the risk for failed back surgery is 50%.
Oh, wow.
Which means technically at 1 year follow-up, these people still have pain. That's what they consider as a failed back surgery.
Wow.
They actually have a code for it for diagnosis because it's so prevalent. So can you work with these people? Absolutely. Is it more difficult? Absolutely. Is it worth it? Absolutely.
And, we have our 2-year-old daughter at home. My son, he's 13. He's had many adjustments. When my daughter was an infant, the person that treated us back then used to come to our house. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
However, we didn't have the equipment that we were limited there.
Yeah.
But even back then, as an infant, our daughter would get adjusted, and it helped her out with it made her feel good. Right. So, children, how important is it for children? And at the same time, how does it help children with ear infections, asthma, stuff like that?
Yeah. 2-part question. First part. So as we go through 0 to 13 months, right? So I have a baby at 3 months old, they're starting to hold their head up. And at 6 months old, maybe we can get them to start crawling, right? These are developmental milestones.
Right.
If an infant misses one of these milestones, it is really tough for them to develop biomechanically long term.
Gotcha.
So they say that it's about 3 out of 10 infants, as they're going through these first 13 months of developmental milestones, actually miss them.
Wow.
They are great patients for chiropractic care. Do they need manipulations? Maybe not always, but there's something that is blocking their central nervous system from using all of their muscles and joints correctly. So chiropractic manipulation for infants, it's way different. It's safe. It's effective, but it's really for these like 30% of kids that I'll use my son, for example. When he started to crawl, he did this weird thing. Cameron, I love you. He did this weird thing with his left leg, right?
Yep.
He'd be on all fours, but his left leg just kind of trailed, and he would crawl with the other legs and limbs normal. That's a developmental milestone failure, right? He's not crawling when he should. We went back, we worked with them, we start to get him to crawl again. But some of these kids, you'll hear them, they go from on their stomach to standing. They never crawled. Like, you hear this and you're like, what? Your kid never crawled? They missed a developmental milestone that will catch up with them, the research says, later on in life.
Gotcha.
Which is really tough to think about. Like, hey,
very interesting.
I had to think about my two-year-old developing for long-term benefit.
Yeah. Well, as we bring this sucker to a close, is there anything else that you would want to leave our amazing audience with?
Yeah. I think that our health is multifactorial. I think that we would say to sleep really good. We need to eat really good. And we need to move really good. So that's one of our core slogans at our office. It's eat well, move well, sleep well. You can do these 3 things from a fundamental standpoint. Your longevity, the joke is, it's not how long I can live. It's, can I shorten the time span between when I'm in a wheelchair and I pass away, right? I don't want to live till I'm 100, be in a wheelchair when I'm 70, and those last 30 years not have quality of life.
That's right.
I want to shorten that time frame. Eat well, sleep well, move well.
Man. So if you feel good, it leads to better quality of life, right? At the end of the day. I love that. Folks, once again, we're hanging with Dr. Jon Elson, the owner of Middle Tennessee Chiropractic and Sports Injury. check him out. Check out his website, midtnchiro.com. That's midtnchiro.com. It'll be in the show notes here, as well as check him out on Facebook, facebook.com/MTCSI. And they're always taking calls. Good luck getting an appointment. I'm just kidding. They get you in, but he's busy. It's always full every time we're there. 615-776-7246. Right. And it's cool. You got the blue on. When you see the Middle Tennessee, I immediately think MTSU. Is there any association there at all?
No, but there should be.
There should be.
Now that
That's
you
right.
say that, Nick.
Yeah. It's the colors and everything. And honestly, like it just fits. And that's a very trusted institution in our fine state.
A Blue Raider now.
That's right. That's right. And he's got his blue on today if you're watching with us. Well, Dr. Jon, man, this is really cool. I know you took a lot of time to be here. Like I said, you got a busy practice happening. So you probably got to line out the door when you get back over there. I got to get you back to your office.
Worth it.
Dude, thank you so much for coming. Hope you had a good time with me today.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
And this was really good. And folks, honestly, like I hope I did right by you guys, because like I'm serious when it comes to this type of stuff. We could sit here all day long and talk about this. But if you hadn't checked it, if you're one of the 90% of people that have not explored this, check it out.
Yeah.
Right, check it out. But do me a favor and make the commitment. I'm not just going to go once. Commit to something. Commit to like multiple visits, just so you can kind of see that. That's where the real joy and happiness comes from.
The magic happens.
That's right. That's right. Well, once again, folks, we were hanging with Dr. Jon Elson, the founder and owner of Middle Tennessee Chiropractic and Sports Injury, and we added lots of hits to the hit streak today.
That's
right,
good, baby.
So, well, folks, thanks again for tuning in to yet another episode of the Hit Streak. I am your man, Nick Hyder. God bless.